Hey friends, this discussion is going to be about two different levels of consciousness, two different types of consciousness. One that is elevated and one that is like depressed or down. I'm going to be using a few different metaphors and analogies to talk about these two different types of consciousness. The one that's elevated, we'll talk about that being like a mountaintop. And the one that is not elevated will be like a valley. The one that is elevated is like a waking consciousness. You are awoken. It's a waking state. The valley, the lower consciousness will be like sleeping. So the vast majority of people, maybe even the vast majority of our lives, we have been spending that, or we spend that unintentionally in a sleeping state in the valley, and only occasionally climb the mountain or climb the peak to the top of the mountain for the waking state, where you have this kind of like other perspective. Things make sense. You can see. You feel like you're aware of yourself, of your surroundings. You have kind of like these interactions with people that make sense. You have high levels of empathy. You have higher levels of understanding and wisdom. Like things seem to make sense to you. Contrasted with the sleeping state in the valley, where you feel lost. You feel alone. You don't feel like things make sense. You don't know where to go, and you suffer. All right. So the thing to think about with these two things is that they are different, they are real, and that you can navigate between them. There are ways to do so. I'm going to give you two ways to climb that mountain, so to navigate outside of the valley up to the mountaintop and to exist there. I'm trying in my own life to figure out, how do I stay at the mountaintop perspectives and the mountaintop experiences as much as possible. And even though we all must go through valleys, and you have to go through valleys to get to other mountaintops, so to speak, how do you spend as little time there as possible and really make the most of it and intentionally pass through it? All right, so the two ways, the two paths, if you will, that go up through up to the mountaintop are made of fear and pain. So fear and pain. Pain is typically the path that most people take and experience when they end up climbing up through a mountain top pass. When you stay in a valley, so when you're in a valley, suffering happens. You're suffering in the valley, there's pain, and then there's suffering, and you're stuck there. When people decide to do something about pain, and they decide to engage it and start to resolve it, they begin to climb the mountain. So elevated consciousness starts to happen. You start to climb the mountain, you start to deal with the pain, you start to make changes, you start to adjust, you make the changes in your life that are necessary to resolve that pain. And in doing so, you start to climb the mountain to an elevated consciousness, to a waking state, that suddenly things start to make sense. You will find after time, through the pain, that your life will get better and that your perspective gets better. That you, again, you can begin to relate to others and yourself more. You begin to understand yourself more. If you reflect on your life and you take a minute and reflect, you will probably observe that through times of pain, when you decide to take action and do something about it, that those are moments in your life where things got better, and they got better in a profound way. It wasn't just like you went from, like having less amount of something you really like to having a lot of something that you like. Like it's more significant and profound than that. So that's typically the way that people climb the mountain, so to speak. The other way, which I think is really cool, is through fear. So chasing fear and looking at fear as a path to climb the mountain to elevated consciousness. When you choose to pursue fear and when you choose to look at something that you're afraid of, it could be like anything ranging from doing a new activity that you're scared to do. It could be like public speaking, going on a trip. It could be going to the doctor. It could be like dealing with an issue that exists with a family member or a relationship, anything that you are resistant to because of fear. If you pursue that fear, if you go after it, that is a path up the mountain. It will bring you into elevated consciousness. And so what I'm resolving and what I want to put forward to you to consider and to think about is that when you climb that mountain into higher perspective, to be able to look out and intentionally choose, what are the things that I'm afraid of? What are the things that I'm resistant to, that I don't want to engage? And to use that as the quick path down back through the valley and then back up to the other mountaintop. Because the fewer amount of minutes, hours, days that you spend in the valley, the better. What happens in the valley is you forget yourself. You forget what you're doing here in this world. You forget who you are, your purpose, your mission. Like you forget what makes you you. You forget what stirs you. And that's normal to happen in a valley. But you don't have to stay there. So spend as little time as you can in the valley by identifying the things that you're afraid of. You can also, again, do that through intentionally leaning into the things that are causing you pain in your life and going and engaging those. The point here is, again, to do it intentionally. Whatever it is, fear or pain, these are two paths upward to the waking state of consciousness that will bring you out of this sleeping state of being in the valley. And then when you choose to do it, then you can more proactively move out of the valley and up the mountain and move from mountain to mountain. Most people, again, tend to do this unintentionally, only when the pain gets so bad that they can no longer suffer through it. And then they know that they have to do something. And then when they engage, suddenly consciousness elevates, awareness elevates, perspective elevates. So to recap here, there are these two different types of perspectives, two different types of consciousness: waking state, sleeping state. You're either at the mountaintop, climbing the mountain, or you are in the valley, stuck, and in a lower state of awareness and consciousness. There's two paths up the mountain: pain or fear. Typically, pain happens unintentionally. You just kind of have to embrace it at some point, but fear can be very intentional, can be chosen super intentionally, especially when you're at different parts of the mountaintop and you have greater visibility and ability to reflect on yourself. So put that thing into practice and you will find that your perceptions and your orientation towards life shift dramatically, especially when you're leaning into fear, when you choose it proactively. Anything that you might be afraid of, things will start to clear, the fog will start to clear. It's going to freak you the hell out to begin with. Like every time I do it, it does for me, every single time, but it does work. And it really is a special thing. It is a special journey. This thing is deeply spiritual, very special. It's not something to take lightly. It does really require intentionality and fortitude, and it takes guts and also support from other people. So as you put these things into place, get support from your friends and family as you start to climb the mountain. All right. I hope that's helpful for you. Hope you're enjoying your day. Take care.